The first scream didn't come from fear of death. It came from disbelief. Moments earlier, the cemetery had been wrapped in a fragile calm, the kind that only exists at funerals where grief moves slowly, and people speak in lowered voices, as if volume itself might disturb the dead. A gray sky hung low over the headstones.
Drop your weapon!
The wind barely moved. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath.
Freeze!
Then someone shouted, "There's a lion!" At first, no one reacted. The words didn't make sense. They floated through the air like a mistake something said out of shock or exhaustion. But when the murmurs spread, when bodies began turning in the same direction all at once, the calm fractured. People saw it, a massive shape at the far edge of the cemetery. Golden fur cutting through the dull colors of stone and grass. A mane catching the light in a way that felt impossibly unreal, like a hallucination formed by grief. A lion. Not behind glass. Not in a sanctuary. Not on a screen. Here. The scream came again, louder this time. Panic rippled through the crowd like a physical force. Shoes scraped against gravel as people backed away. Someone dropped a bouquet. Another tripped over a headstone and fell hard, scrambling to get back up. The funeral dissolved into chaos. Police officers who had been stationed nearby reacted instantly. Hands went to radios. Voices sharpened. Orders were shouted over one another as weapons were drawn. The air shifted, heavy electric charge with the unmistakable tension of a situation about to turn lethal. Clear the area. Get back. Where did it come from? No one had answers. The lion stepped forward. Gasps tore through the crowd. The distance between predator and people closed by a few feet, then a few more. Cameras appeared in shaking hands, though no one seemed to realize they were filming. Instinct took over. Document first, understand later. The officers raised their guns. This was the moment everyone would remember afterward, the moment time seemed to stretch thin and fragile, as if the wrong movement might tear it apart. And then there was Margaret Collins. She stood near the front unmoving, 78 years old, blind. Dressed in black, her gloved hands folded carefully over the handle of her white cane. She had been standing beside her husband's casket only seconds earlier, listening to the murmur of condolences, the soft shuffle of feet, the sound of soil waiting to fall. She did not see the lion. She did not see the guns. She did not see the way the crowd recoiled from her, creating a widening circle of empty space that left her suddenly, terrifyingly alone. Margaret heard the shouting. She heard fear raw and uncontrolled in voices that moments ago had been gentle. She heard the metallic click of weapons being raised. She heard someone cry her name from behind, too far away to reach her in time, but she didn't move. Grief had hollowed her out. Shock had slowed her reactions, and blindness had made her unaware of the one detail that changed everything. She was now standing directly in the lion's path. "Ma'am, you need to move," someone shouted. Margaret turned her head, slightly confused. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice calm in a way that felt wrong, almost eerie. The lion stopped. The sudden stillness was worse than movement. He stood at the edge of the cleared space, tail low, head lifted. His eyes swept the scene, not frantic, not aggressive, but alert. A creature assessing chaos that did not belong to him. A police officer adjusted his stance. The barrel of his weapon tracked the lion's chest. "Take the shot if he moves," a voice said through clenched teeth. Margaret took a small step forward. Someone screamed. The lion moved too. A collective gasp surged from the crowd, sharp enough to hurt. This was it, the moment everyone would later replay in their minds, the second where instinct told them the story was about to end in blood. But the lion didn't charge. He slowed, his massive body, lowered muscles relaxing rather than coiling. Each step was measured, deliberate, as if he were walking into something fragile rather than dangerous. His gaze fixed on Margaret, not with hunger, not with threat, but with a focus so intense it felt intimate. Margaret felt the change in the air before anyone spoke. She paused, her brow furrowing slightly. "Henry," she whispered, barely audible. The name cut through the noise like a blade. The lion stopped again, closer now. Close enough that the crowd could see the rise and fall of his chest, the faint scars etched into his mane. Close enough that the police realized with growing horror that if they fired now, the blind old woman would be directly in the line of fire. "Hold!" someone shouted. Fingers trembled on triggers. Margaret lifted one hand, uncertain, searching for something solid in a world that had suddenly gone silent. The lion took one final step, and then lowered himself, placing his body between her and the guns aimed from every direction. He did not roar. He did not bare his teeth. He lay down. The shock of it hit harder than any scream. In a cemetery overtaken by fear, surrounded by weapons and panic, a lion had chosen stillness. And no one in that frozen moment understood why, but everyone knew they were witnessing something that would change them forever. Margaret Collins did not know that the crowd had moved away from her. She felt the space before she understood it. The sudden openness of the air, the way sound no longer bounced back toward her as it had moments earlier. When you lose your sight, the world teaches you other ways to measure distance. Echo, warmth, breath, the subtle pressure of bodies nearby. That pressure was gone now. What remained felt wide and exposed, like standing at the edge of something you cannot see. She tightened her grip on her cane, only minutes before she had been surrounded by people. Voices had brushed past her like soft fabric, sympathetic, careful, unsure of what to say to a woman who had just buried the man she loved for 54 years. Hands had touched her arm, her shoulder. Someone had adjusted the black shawl slipping from her neck. Someone else had whispered that Henry would have wanted sunshine today, even though the sky was gray. Margaret had listened and nodded and thanked them, performing the rituals grief demands while feeling strangely detached from her own body. Because Henry was gone, and the world in all its noise and movement suddenly felt unnecessary. Blindness had taken Margaret's sight 15 years earlier, slowly at first, then all at once. But grief took things faster. It arrived without warning, stripping color, sound, and weight from everything it touched. Standing there in the cemetery, she felt smaller than she had ever felt before. Not fragile exactly, but unfinished, as if part of her had been left behind with the casket now sealed beneath the ground. She did not know why the voices around her had changed. She heard urgency now, sharpness, fear unfiltered by politeness. Words collided with each other, breaking apart before she could catch their meaning. "Ma'am, please, step back, don't move." Margaret turned her head toward the sound, confused. She had lived long enough to recognize panic, but this felt different. Not personal, collective, as if the air itself had become afraid. "What's happening?" she asked. No one answered her directly. Someone called her name from behind, too far away. Another voice told people to keep their distance. She heard the scrape of shoes against gravel, the soft thud of someone kneeling or falling. She smelled disturbed earth and crushed flowers. Still, no one touched her. That absence hurt more than anything else. Margaret had learned over the years to read Henry's presence in small ways. The rhythm of his breathing when he slept, the scent of his jacket when he came in from outside, the weight of his hand at the small of her back when crossing a street. Those things had been her compass, her certainty. Now, standing alone, she felt untethered. She remembered how Henry used to describe the animals he worked with. Not in scientific terms, but in stories. He would sit beside her in the evenings, guiding her fingers over raised photographs, letting her feel the textures of fur and mane while he talked. "There's a difference between fear and misunderstanding," he used to say. "Most people never learn which one they're feeling." She had believed him because Henry never spoke lightly about the world. He chose his words the way he chose his actions, carefully. When Margaret heard the sound of metal shifting hard, deliberate, she frowned. That sound did not belong at a funeral. It carried a finality that made her chest tighten. "Henry," she said without meaning to. The name slipped out of her like a habit her body hadn't yet broken. She took a step forward. The reaction was immediate. A sharp intake of breath from somewhere close. A voice shouted something she couldn't make out. The panic around her swelled, pressing against her ears until it felt physical. Margaret stopped. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with confusion. She did not know where she was supposed to go. She did not know what direction was safe. Blindness had taught her independence, but only when the world followed its usual rules. This was different. The rules had changed without telling her. She lowered her chin slightly and listened. That was when she sensed it. A presence. Not human, not loud. Just there. The air in front of her felt warmer, heavier, as if something large had entered her space. She could hear breathing now, slow, steady, deeper than any person's. The sound did not frighten her. It grounded her, strangely familiar in a way she couldn't immediately place. Her fingers trembled as she lifted her hand palm outward, instinctively searching for something solid. She did not reach far. She did not rush. Years of moving through darkness had taught her patience. The crowd made a sound, then a collective strangled murmur that rippled outward and fell apart into silence. Margaret felt the ground vibrate softly beneath her feet as the presence shifted closer. She did not pull away. Grief has a way of dulling fear. It strips the future of urgency. What remained for Margaret was memory, and memory told her that some things recognized her even when she could not see them. She inhaled slowly. There it was, a scent she had not encountered in years but never truly forgotten. Earthy, warm, alive. Layered beneath it, something else, something familiar enough to tighten her throat. She swallowed hard. "Henry," she whispered again. The name did not sound like a question this time. She felt a gentle pressure near her knees, then a soft shift of weight as something lowered itself in front of her. The breathing changed closer now, steady and calm. Whatever stood there was not agitated. It was waiting. Margaret's hand found fur. Thick, coarse at first, then softer as her fingers moved. Her breath caught not in fear, but in recognition that arrived without explanation. She did not know why she knew. She only knew that she did. Her shoulders sagged. Tears blurred eyes that could no longer see. She did not need to understand the scene unfolding around her. The guns, the officers, the frozen crowd. In that moment, the world narrowed to what she could feel: the echo of Henry's presence in the warmth before her. The steady reassurance of something that had chosen stillness over chaos. Margaret stood there blind and grieving, touching the past and the present at once. And for the first time since Henry had been lowered into the ground, she did not feel alone. Everyone watching believed they already knew how this would end. A lion had entered a cemetery. Police weapons were raised. A blind old woman stood directly in its path. Every instinct human cultural learned pointed toward the same conclusion. Violence was not just possible, it was expected, necessary, inevitable. That expectation pressed down on the moment like a weight. Solomon stood motionless for a long breath. His mane stirred slightly in the wind, but the rest of him was still grounded, deliberate. He did not pace. He did not growl. He did not display the warning signs the officers had been trained to watch for. Instead, he looked past the crowd, past the weapons, past the chaos, and focused entirely on the woman in black standing alone before him. Margaret Collins. She could not see the distance between them closing. She could not see the tension in the officers' shoulders or the white-knuckled grip on their triggers. She felt only the quiet certainty that something important was happening, something that required her to remain exactly where she was. Solomon took another step forward. Several officers flinched. One shifted his footing, preparing to fire if the lion lunged. The command to shoot hovered unspoken, suspended by the fragile uncertainty of what they were witnessing. Solomon slowed again. This was the moment that broke the rules. Lions do not slow when approaching prey. They do not hesitate when closing distance. Every manual, every documentary, every instinct reinforced that truth. But Solomon's body language did not match the narrative people had prepared themselves for. His head lowered not in submission but in recognition. His shoulders relaxed, his tail stilled. He was not hunting, he was approaching. Margaret sensed the change before anyone else did. The air shifted, becoming denser, warmer. The sound of breathing reached her ears, deep and rhythmic, unhurried. She did not step back. She did not call for help. She simply listened. Her fingers tightened slightly around the handle of her cane, then loosened again as another memory surfaced: Henry's voice, years ago, guiding her hand across a photograph. "Pay attention to how they move," he had said. "That tells you everything you need to know." Solomon stopped just inches away. From the crowd's perspective, the proximity was unbearable. Too close, far too close. A single movement could tip the balance. A single misinterpretation could turn stillness into tragedy. Margaret lifted her hands slowly, cautiously, palm outward. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Solomon did not recoil. He leaned forward, closing the last sliver of space between them, and gently pressed the side of his head against her hand. The contact was light, almost careful, an unmistakable choice rather than a reflex. The effect was immediate. Margaret's breath caught. Her shoulders trembled, then softened. Her fingers spread instinctively, finding the texture of his mane, the warmth beneath the fur. She did not pull away. She did not stiffen. Instead, she rested her hand there, as if it belonged. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I know you," she whispered, though she could not have explained how. Solomon exhaled slowly, a sound that vibrated through her arm and into her chest. He lowered himself, then bending his front legs first, then easing his body down until he was lying at her feet. His massive frame formed a barrier between her and the semicircle of raised guns behind her. The meaning of the gesture landed all at once. This was not coincidence. This was not confusion. This was protection. An officer near the front lowered his weapon slightly without realizing it. Another followed. Training told them to stay alert, to stay ready, but something deeper, older, more human urged restraint. Solomon did not look at them. His focus remained on Margaret. She reached out with her other hand, resting it gently against his mane. Her movements were slow, respectful, guided by instinct rather than thought. Years of blindness had taught her how to move without startling the unseen. The lion did not flinch. Around them, the cemetery had gone silent. No shouting, no commands. Even the wind seemed to pause. People watched, breath held, witnessing a scene they had no framework to understand. A lion lying still. A blind woman unafraid. Guns aimed at the ground. Someone in the crowd began to cry quietly. Another followed. The sound was not hysteria, it was release. The kind that comes when a story takes a turn you didn't know you needed. Solomon shifted slightly, adjusting his position so that his body shielded Margaret more fully. The message was unmistakable now. Whatever happened next would have to go through him first. An officer spoke softly into his radio voice, unsteady. "Hold your fire," he said, though by then it felt unnecessary. No one needed to be told. Margaret leaned down a fraction, her forehead nearly touching Solomon's mane. "Henry," she said again, this time with a softness that carried years of shared life. "You always said love doesn't disappear." Solomon's ears flicked. Memory stirred, not as images or words, but as recognition. The scent of the man who had knelt beside him when he was young. The sound of his voice. The quiet presence of the woman who had stood nearby, listening, trusting. The bond had not been broken by time. It had been waiting. Solomon lifted his head briefly and scanned the crowd, not with hostility, but awareness. He knew where he was. He knew the danger. And still he chose to remain. That choice changed everything. The officers stepped back one by one, weapons lowered fully now. The threat had dissolved, replaced by a reverence none of them would have admitted to feeling minutes earlier. They were not in control of this moment. They were witnesses. Solomon settled again, content in stillness. Margaret remained standing, one hand resting on him, the other clutching her cane like an anchor. She did not need to see the faces around her to know they had changed. The expectation of violence had been rewritten. In its place stood something quieter, stronger, and far more unsettling, proof that memory can cross species, that loyalty can outlive death, and that sometimes the most powerful act is choosing not to harm when the world expects you to. No one there would ever forget the moment a lion broke every expectation and taught them what restraint truly looked like. No one gave the order. That was the strangest part later, when the scene was replayed in reports, in interviews, and quiet conversations that stretched long into the night. There was no single command crackling over the radio, no shouted instruction that changed the course of events. What happened instead was slower and far more unsettling. One by one, the guns began to lower. At first, it was almost imperceptible. A barrel dipped a fraction of an inch, no longer aligned with Solomon's chest. A finger loosened, easing off a trigger that had been tense moments earlier. An officer exhaled, realizing he had been holding his breath for longer than he could remember. Solomon did not react. He remained where he was, lying calmly at Margaret Collins' feet, his body angled so that it formed a solid wall between her and the line of armed men. His breathing was slow, and even the rise and fall of his flank steady enough to be hypnotic. He had made his choice already. He was not waiting to see what the humans would do. They were the ones being tested now. From the officer's perspective, everything they had been trained to rely on had collapsed. Fear threat assessment protocol, none of it applied cleanly to what stood before them. This was not a charging animal. This was not an unpredictable threat. This was a lion displaying deliberate restraint in the middle of chaos. And restraint was something they understood. An older officer, his face lined by years on the force, lowered his weapon fully and rested it against his thigh. He had responded to hostage situations, domestic standoffs, active shooters. He knew what it looked like when a moment tipped toward tragedy. This was tipping the other way. Across the open space, Margaret remained still. She did not know that weapons had been aimed at her moments ago. She did not know they were now pointed harmlessly toward the ground. What she felt was the solid warmth in front of her, the quiet certainty that she was not in danger, not because the world had decided to spare her, but because something had chosen to stand in its way. She shifted her weight, slightly careful not to startle Solomon. Her hand rested against his mane, fingers curled into the thick fur. The contact grounded her, anchoring her in a present that felt impossibly layered, past and present, overlapping in ways she could not articulate. Around them, people began to cry, not loudly, not dramatically, just the quiet, involuntary release of emotion that comes when fear drains too quickly from the body. A woman pressed her hand to her mouth, eyes shining. A man wiped his face with the sleeve of his jacket, staring openly now, no longer trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The officers noticed too. Something had shifted in the crowd. Not relief exactly, but humility. The recognition that they were witnessing a moment that did not belong to them. That their authority, their weapons, their readiness to act had suddenly become secondary to a truth unfolding without their permission. A sergeant stepped forward cautiously, his movements slow and open. He spoke quietly into his radio, choosing his words with care. "We're standing down," he said. "Repeat, we're standing down." The response crackled back, confused but compliant. Solomon lifted his head, then just enough to glance around. His eyes moved across the people, the uniforms, the scattered headstones. There was no challenge in his gaze, only awareness. He knew where he was. He knew the danger had not entirely disappeared. Still, he stayed. Margaret tilted her head slightly, sensing the change in the air. The tension that had pressed against her ears earlier had eased. The crowd's breathing had slowed. The sharpness in the voices was gone. "Is it over?" she asked softly, unsure who she was addressing. No one answered right away. Then a woman's voice came from nearby, thick with emotion. "You're safe," she said. "You're okay." Margaret nodded, though she had never doubted it, not since she felt Solomon settle in front of her. She did not release her grip on his mane. She did not step away. Something inside her knew that movement would break the fragile integrity of the moment. Solomon shifted again, adjusting his position so that his body remained squarely between Margaret and the open space beyond. It was not a defensive move. It was careful, intentional, as if he were aware of angles, of sight lines, of the simple geometry of protection. Several officers exchanged glances. This was no accident. The realization settled slowly, but when it did, it carried weight. Solomon was not acting randomly. He was responding to something specific to Margaret, to her voice, to the memory of a man whose presence lingered around her like a scent that time had not erased. Henry Collins. Some of the officers knew the name already. They had heard it earlier at the funeral, spoken with reverence. A conservationist, a man known for patience rather than force, someone who believed that animals responded to how they were treated, not how they were controlled. Standing there now, watching the lion's behavior, that belief no longer felt abstract. It felt proven. One officer removed his hat, pressing it briefly against his chest before lowering it again. Another stepped back, fully increasing the distance, making it clear that no one intended to challenge what Solomon had claimed. The guns were no longer just lowered. They were irrelevant. The crowd seemed to sense it all at once. People edged closer, not recklessly, but with quiet respect. Phones were forgotten, conversations fell away. The cemetery, which had only minutes earlier been a place of panic, now felt like something else entirely. A threshold. Solomon lay still, eyes half closed now, his breathing deep and calm. Margaret leaned forward slightly, her forehead almost touching his mane. She did not speak. She did not need to. In that posture, lion and woman, predator and human protector, and protected, something fundamental shifted in everyone watching. The easy divisions people relied on began to blur. Dangerous and safe, wild and gentle, human and animal. They were no longer useful categories. What remained was choice. The police had come prepared to end a threat. Instead, they were witnessing restraint and active control, so precise, so intentional, that it demanded a response in kind. Lowering their guns was not surrender, it was recognition. Recognition that sometimes authority means knowing when not to act. That sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is step back and allow something truer to take shape. Solomon stayed with Margaret until the tension had fully drained from the scene. Only when the crowd's breathing had steadied, when the officer's posture had softened, when the cemetery had reclaimed its quiet, did he begin to rise, slowly, carefully. Margaret felt the shift and straightened her hand, sliding reluctantly from his mane. "Thank you," she whispered, not knowing if he would understand the words, but trusting that the intention mattered more. Solomon paused, standing tall beside her for a brief moment. Then he turned away, unhurried, his presence no longer a question mark, but a statement that would echo in every person there long after he was gone. The police watched him go, weapons untouched, minds altered. They had come prepared to pull the trigger. Instead, they had learned what it looked like to lower it and why that choice could matter more than any other. The crowd did not disperse right away. People lingered among the headstones long after Solomon had stepped back, as if leaving too quickly might erase what they had just witnessed. Conversations resumed in hushed tones, but they were no longer filled with fear. They carried something heavier: wonder, confusion, and a quiet need to understand. It was the questions that came first. Who was he? Why did he come here? Why her? The answers did not arrive all at once. They emerged slowly, pieced together from fragments of memory and whispered stories that had never seemed important before this moment. Margaret Collins sat on a folding chair near the casket, hands resting in her lap, listening. She had not moved far from where Solomon had been. The warmth he left behind still seemed to cling to the air around her, like an echo that refused to fade. Someone knelt beside her and spoke gently. "Margaret, do you know that lion?" She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried more sadness than joy. "I think," she said carefully, "that he knows me." That was all she offered at first. But as the afternoon stretched on, as police reports were written and rewritten, as officers replayed the scene in their minds, the truth began to surface. Henry Collins had not been just another name on the program handed out at the funeral. He had been a man who believed that animals responded to consistency, not control. A man who spent decades working in conservation, choosing patience over dominance, trust over fear. Years earlier, when Solomon was still young, injured, frightened, and trapped between survival and death, it was Henry who stayed. Not because he was certain the lion would live, and not because he expected gratitude. He stayed because leaving felt wrong. Margaret remembered that day clearly. She remembered the way Henry's voice changed when he spoke about the lion, how it softened, slowed, as if he were choosing each word with care. She remembered standing nearby, listening, trusting him completely, even when the risk was obvious. "He's not calm because he's weak," Henry had said then. "He's calm because he's thinking." That belief had shaped everything that followed. Henry never treated Solomon as a possession. He never tried to claim what he saved. When the lion was strong enough, Henry stepped back. He let the wild reclaim what was always meant to belong to it. Margaret thought often about that choice after Henry died. Now, sitting among strangers who were slowly beginning to understand, she realized that Henry had not disappeared when he was lowered into the ground. His presence had simply changed form. The truth reached the officers next. One by one, they began to connect the behavior they had witnessed with the man whose funeral they had nearly interrupted with gunfire. Solomon's restraint was not random. His recognition was not coincidence. It was memory stored not in words, but in patterns and scent, in the deep associations animals form when trust is earned rather than forced. That realization unsettled them. It was easier to believe in unpredictability and danger without reason. Harder to accept that an animal might carry a moral response, one shaped by how it had been treated years before. And yet that was the only explanation that fit. Later that evening, after the cemetery emptied and the light began to fade, Margaret was driven back to the small sanctuary where Solomon had been living. She insisted on going. Not out of obligation, but because something inside her felt unfinished. When she stepped out of the car, she heard him before she saw, or rather, before she felt him. The familiar rhythm of breathing, the low, steady presence moving toward her without urgency. Solomon approached slowly, stopping a few feet away. Margaret did not reach out immediately. She spoke instead, her voice soft and steady. She told him about the funeral, about the flowers Henry would have liked, about the music that had played while the casket was lowered. She told him that Henry was gone. Solomon listened. He lowered himself to the ground again, resting his massive head against the earth. Margaret reached out, then placing her hand gently against his mane. The contact was quiet, reverent, and deeply personal. That night marked another change. In the days that followed, Solomon's caretakers noticed a shift. He ate less, moved more slowly, spent long hours lying still, gaze fixed on nothing anyone else could see. It was not illness, it was grief. Margaret returned often. She talked to him. She sang the song Henry used to hum when the world felt heavy. She sat beside him in silence when words felt unnecessary. Gradually, Solomon lifted his head more often. His appetite returned. His eyes regained their focus. Healing did not erase loss. It simply made room to live alongside it. For everyone who had been at the cemetery, the truth continued to unfold long after the headlines faded. People spoke differently about animals after that day, about fear, about what it meant to protect and to be protected. They had seen with their own eyes that love could cross boundaries no one believed were meant to be crossed. That loyalty did not end when one heart stopped beating. That memory, when shaped by kindness, could outlast time itself. Margaret never tried to explain the moment in simple terms. She didn't need to. She knew that what Solomon had done was not extraordinary because he was a lion. It was extraordinary because he remembered who Henry was, and because he chose to honor that memory when it mattered most. The truth that changed everyone there was not that animals could be gentle. It was that gentleness could be learned, remembered, and returned. And once you understand that the world never looks the same again, when the cemetery finally returned to silence, something invisible remained behind. It wasn't just the memory of a lion lying calmly in front of a blind old woman. It wasn't only the image of police officers lowering their guns, stunned into stillness by a choice they never expected an animal to make. What lingered was a question quiet, unsettling, and impossible to ignore. What does the world remember about us after we are gone? Henry Collins did not leave behind monuments or headlines. He left behind a way of treating life that refused to disappear. His patience, his restraint, his belief that animals respond not to fear, but to consistency, all of it survived him. It lived on in Solomon. It revealed itself at the exact moment violence seemed inevitable. And that is the first lesson this story offers us: kindness is never wasted. So often, compassion feels small in a world that rewards dominance. It feels fragile, temporary, even naive. Henry had no guarantee that saving a lion years earlier would matter beyond that single moment. He did not act to secure a future reward. He acted because mercy, once chosen, becomes part of who we are. And that choice echoed across time, across species, across death itself. The second lesson is harder to accept. Fear is usually born from misunderstanding. Every person at that cemetery believed they understood what a lion represented: danger, violence, loss of control. Yet Solomon shattered those assumptions, not by roaring, but by refusing to do what everyone expected. He showed that restraint can be as powerful as force, and that awareness does not always lead to aggression. The police officers that day did not fail in their duty. They adapted. They listened. They recognized a truth unfolding in front of them and had the courage to stand down. That too is a form of strength, one we don't celebrate nearly enough. There is also a lesson here about memory. We like to believe memory belongs only to humans, that animals exist in a constant present. But this story challenges that comfort. Solomon remembered Henry, not as a concept, but as a presence carried in scent, sound, and association. That memory shaped his behavior years later in a moment that demanded clarity rather than instinct. Memory, it turns out, is not defined by language. It is defined by experience. And perhaps the most important lesson of all lies with Margaret Collins. Blind, grieving, vulnerable, she stood at the center of a moment that could have ended in tragedy. She did not see the danger, but she felt the truth. She trusted the calm when others trusted fear. In doing so, she reminded everyone watching that connection does not require sight, only openness. Her quiet courage completed the circle Henry began. This story is not about a lion behaving like a human. It is about humans remembering how to behave with humility. It is about recognizing that the line between wild and civilized is thinner than we think, and that compassion is the bridge across it. Animal stories like this matter because they restore perspective. They remind us that the world is not only shaped by power, but by choices made in quiet moments without witnesses, without applause. They show us that love can outlast death, that trust can survive time, and that sometimes the most extraordinary acts come not from strength, but from restraint. If this story moved you, if it made you pause, reflect, or see animals and humanity through a different lens, then you understand why we share these stories. By subscribing to the channel, you help us continue telling animal stories that inspire empathy, healing, and a deeper understanding of the bonds that connect all living beings. Your support allows these stories to reach more hearts, spark more conversations, and remind more people that kindness once given never truly disappears. Thank you for being here, and thank you for choosing to believe that compassion still matters.